These words I once penned in my work, Beyond Good and Evil, a truth that makes you tremble, for you already sense its correctness in the deepest recesses of your being. How timid you are before my dangerous thoughts. And yet, how greedily you devour them while pretending to examine them merely out of intellectual curiosity. Imagine this, you creature of daily routine. You stand exhausted before your mirror, and for a fleeting moment, perhaps between two breaths, a stranger gazes back at you. Ah, do you now see the terror in your own eyes? You who lead your life according to moral principles you have never dared to question. But what if I tell you that these principles are nothing but fetters, forged by the weak to restrain the strong? What if all your convictions, your virtues, are merely lies you tell yourself to avoid seeing the abyss within you? You live in your small, secure world of conventions and politeness. You speak of goodness and decency and compassion, and then call these pitiful instincts of your weakness morality. Oh, how you deceive yourselves! How you flee from the deeper knowledge that beneath your civilized surface lurks a wild beast that thirsts for power, for dominance, for cruelty. You repress this truth, you deny it, you paste colorful pictures of self-satisfaction over it, but my razor-sharp gaze penetrates your masquerades. You moderns with your science of the soul are only now beginning to fathom what I long ago recognized. A shocking truth about the abysses in your psyche that will forever destroy your understanding of what you call moral. How amusing to watch you grope and fumble as you slowly tread the paths I traversed long ago. You all wear masks, masks upon masks, a pathetic parade of pretense that you perform for the world and, worse still, for yourselves. Yet beneath this ridiculous masquerade lurks a chaos of drives, of power hunger and cruelties, which you have banished into the darkness of yourself. The real tragedy lies not in the existence of this abyss, but in your cowardly refusal to look down into it. Hear now what I shall reveal to you in the coming minutes. My psychology of the abyss is not merely a gloomy insight, but the key to your transformation. For here lies the great paradox of being human. In what you most fear and deny lies your greatest strength concealed. Is it not strange? Modern science, your evolutionary theory, speaks of the animal nature of humans. It explains you as higher primates, as animals with more complex brains, and yet you fear nothing more than your own animality. You construct entire cultural edifices, religions, moral concepts only to veil this fundamental fact, that you are animals driven by will to power, by reproductive instincts, by aggression and desire. How much energy you waste denying this simple truth. Understand the context in which I lived and thought, a Europe suffocating under its own moral straitjackets, while simultaneously the death of God crept like a shadow over society. I saw what my blind contemporaries refused to see. The old tablets of values were crumbling to dust. My proclamation of the death of God was not a triumphant exclamation of atheism as the shallow minds understood it, but the diagnosis of an epical catastrophe, the collapse of that transcendent authority that gave your morality its supposed objectivity. Science, which once set out to dethrone God, has succeeded, and now stands itself before the abyss of meaninglessness. Ha! What irony! It has proven to you that you are mere chance products of an indifferent evolution. Dust particles in the cosmic vacuum, meaningless bundles of atoms. And now it wonders why a wave of nihilism rolls across Europe. My madman with his lantern searching for God in the bright morning foresaw it. Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the entire horizon? What did we do when we unchained this earth from its sun? I was not always this diagnostician of decadence, this psychologist of the unacknowledged. I too was once a believing, hopeful spirit. I too trusted in reason, science, morality, until I recognized that all these idols were merely new masks for the old illusions. And from this painful recognition, from this radical doubt, I forged the weapon of my philosophy. The first great error I must now tear from you. You believe your morality is a bulwark against the chaos of your instincts. In truth, it is only a symptom of your weakness. The good people, and as they call themselves, have buried their own abysses so deeply that they appear virtuous to themselves. What a grandiose self-deception! Do you not recognize the cruelty in your own goodness, the vengefulness in your justice, the desire to dominate in your helpfulness? In my genealogy of morals, this dynamite against 2,000 years of perverted instinct that you call morality, I revealed the true roots of your ethical values. They did not grow from love, not from wisdom, not from divine revelation, but from the resentment of the weak against the strong. The Christian Platonic morality that you so readily swallow is nothing other than the sublime revenge of the inferior, the great slave revolt in morality, which turned the original values, the values of the noble, the life-affirming, upside down. An experiment for the courageous spirit among you. Observe yourself when you act selflessly. Do you not feel this sweet shiver of superiority? The secret triumph that flows through you? The satisfaction of power in the act of giving? Ha! You are no saints. You are merely skilled actors in the theater of morality. Do you know that deceptive feeling of satisfaction when you toss a coin to a beggar? That self-righteousness that flows through you when you are generous? The quiet joy in the fact that you are not like that miserable person who depends on your favor? The fact that you do not admit this feeling, indeed perhaps do not even consciously perceive it, makes it only more revealing. You warm yourself in your own moral excellence, while secretly enjoying the hierarchy that your charity establishes between you and the recipient. You moral priests of modernity who preach of equality and justice and human rights, how poorly you lie, how transparent your masquerades to the sharp eye. In each of your humanitarian gestures and every progressive word, the old will to power shimmers through, only this time disguised as its own opposite. You condemn the open exercise of power while practicing a more subtle, more insidious form of power. The power of those who set the moral standards, who may determine what is good and evil. I do not want you to act unselfishly. I only want you to be honest. Honest with yourselves about the selfish motives that hide behind your unselfishness. Honest about the will to power that pulses in each of your cells, whether you want to admit it or not. This honesty, this integrity before oneself, is 1,000 times more valuable than all your feigned virtues. The second error, you consider your conscious motives to be the true driving forces of your actions. What naivete! Beneath the thin surface of your consciousness rages a war of instincts, a chaotic struggle for supremacy. What you call I is merely the battle report of a war you do not even notice. I already revealed in Human All Too Human that your supposedly noblest actions spring from the same instincts as your most reprehensible ones. The selfless helper enjoys his power over the person in need. The just judge satisfies his vengeful instinct under the cloak of law. The loving partner seeks possession and control. Anyone who dares to dig deeper here finds the will to power in every corner of your virtues, that fundamental force of all life that you attempt to deny. Modern psychology now confirms what I already knew. Your consciousness is only a small room in the vast architecture of yourself. Experiments show that your decisions are already made before your consciousness becomes aware of them. Isn't that delicious? You imagine yourself steering, while in truth you are being steered. Your psychologists speak of the unconscious that determines your actions and believe they have discovered something new. Already in Daybreak, I wrote, "Actions are never what they appear to us to be. We have expended so much labor on learning that external things are not as they appear to us to be. Well then, the case is the same with the inner world. How slowly you grasp what I already knew. And now your neuroscience comes along and discovers that your decisions are already fixed in your brain before your consciousness perceives them. What a revolutionary insight! I could have told you a century earlier, and I did. That which of our experiences is not incorporated into our consciousness has not been experienced. We have only experienced a minimal amount. What follows from this? A moral vacuum? Chaos? No, the possibility of self-overcoming. Your psychologists, these timid shadows of my thinking, today speak of the shadow of personality. How amusing. I spoke of the necessity of dancing with one's own demons when your science of the soul was still in its infancy. How easy it was for me to look into the human soul. I, who was an abyss myself. I, who was forced by illness and solitude to descend into the deepest cellars of my own being. What your psychologists try to prove through laborious laboratory experiments, I recognize through the merciless gaze into the mirror of my own existence. When my body broke down, when my eyes failed, when migraine raged for days, then I learned what you still seek to avoid: the confrontation with the abyss. The third and perhaps deepest error: you believe the abyss within you is a threat to be feared. But I tell you, only from this abyss can greatness arise. All your creative power, your passion, your capacity for self-overcoming, they are rooted in those depths that you so desperately try to ignore. Remember my metaphor of the three metamorphoses of the spirit, from the camel to the lion to the child. The camel, you burden-bearers of morality, drags the values of others through the desert. The lion destroys the old tablets, says "I will" instead of "thou shalt." But only the child represents the truly creative spirit who can create new values. But how shall you ever become a lion if you do not first recognize that you are camels? How shall you overcome the abyss if you do not first look down into it? The great psychological insight of my philosophy is this: the path to greatness leads through the abyss, not around it. Your deepest fears, your darkest impulses, they are not to be denied, but integrated. The Übermensch of whom I speak is not the morally perfect one, but the one who can affirm all aspects of his self, who creates a dancing order from the chaos of his inner being. The prevailing psychology of your time is slowly approaching this understanding. It speaks of integration of the shadow, of acceptance instead of repression. How long it has taken for my truths to penetrate to you through the filter of science. The frightening consequence: your psychological problems, your fears, compulsions, and neuroses, are not simply errors in the system. They are the necessary consequence of your moral self-denial. Every suppressed truth of your being avenges itself through symptoms. Every denied power becomes a weakness. In your desperate flight from the abyss, you fall into it all the more surely. I see your frightened faces. Is he a nihilist? Logically, you ask yourselves, does he want to destroy all morality? How superficially you think. I am not a nihilist. I am the most passionate opponent of nihilism. For true nihilism lies not in the rejection of all values, but in the blind acceptance of values that deny life. Your morality is more nihilistic than all my dangerous thoughts. What I demand is not the absence of values, but the revaluation of all values. Not licentiousness, but a higher form of self-discipline that springs from the affirmation of the whole self. The Übermensch is not the tyrant of his instincts, but their conductor. He forms a symphony from the chaos of his inner being. Do you now understand the deeper meaning of my Zarathustra, my most beloved work? Zarathustra, who descends from his solitude to teach people that they should be bridges to the Übermensch. He speaks not of your petty happiness, not of your pathetic well-being, but of the great yes-saying to life in all its terrible and wonderful dimensions. Of that yes-saying that does not avoid the abyss, but recognizes and affirms it as a necessary part of being. The eternal recurrence of the same, my heaviest thought, is the touchstone of this yes-saying. Could you live in such a way that you would will every second of your life, every joy and every pain, every ecstasy and every torment, to be repeated infinitely often? Those who flee from their own abyss will collapse at this thought. Only those who can affirm their whole self, light and shadow, will cry, once more, and countless times more. The practical application of my philosophy of the abyss begins with radical honesty before yourself. Ask yourself, what do I hide from myself? Which impulses do I condemn as evil instead of understanding and directing their energy? What masks do I wear even when I'm alone? What secret pleasure do I feel at the thought of power, of superiority, of triumph over others? A pleasure I will not admit to myself because it does not fit my virtuous self-image. Consider your negative emotions, anger, envy, jealousy, even hatred, not as enemies but as messengers. They show you where you have denied yourself. They are the voices from the abyss that want to be heard. Laugh at the positive thinkers with their saccharine lies. True positivity lies in the affirmation of all of life, with all its heights and depths. Those who can only affirm the positive affirm nothing in truth. They merely flee from the difficult, the terrible, the tragic, and thus from life itself. What I recognized more than a century ago is more relevant today than ever. The abyss within you is not your enemy, but the source of your deepest strength. The question is not whether you have dark sides, but how you integrate them into your self-image instead of denying them and thereby intensifying their devastating effect. The next time you encounter that fleeting stranger in the mirror, do not try to look away. Hold his gaze and recognize, this is also you. And in this recognition, in this venture of looking down, lies the first step toward true self-overcoming. I am not a teacher for all, and do not wish to be. I am no savior, no friend of mankind, none of those soft improvers of humanity. My words are not meant for the ears of the masses. They are for the few, the rare ones, those good Europeans who have the courage to endure themselves without the crutches of morality. For those who are strong enough not only to contemplate the abyss, but to draw from it. I see you who have followed me this far. Perhaps you are one of those rare spirits for whom my philosophy calls. Or perhaps you are merely a curious soul playing with the idea of being a free spirit while secretly clinging to the old tablets. No matter, the seed is sown, doubt is awakened, and once awakened, it can no longer be silenced. The abyss has gazed back, and you will never be the same. What do you think? Do you have the courage to look your own abyss in the eye? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to delve deeper into the hidden truths that shape your thinking and actions. Truths that make the herd people shudder, but which the free spirit recognizes as steps to his height.